Hiya! Welcome to Lisa Loves. Today I'm going to ask my viewers, the few of you, a big favour. Even if you're not into books, if you're not into reading books, I would urge you to watch this. It's my first book review. I've never really reviewed a book before. I'm just telling you my thoughts on this one. The reason why I really want to do this, and I would really like as many people as possible to watch, it was written by my good friend Chris. A lot of you will know from Two Vloggers More. I've known Chris for I think 12 or 13 years now online, from MySpace days, if anyone remembers that. He used to run a forum called Dark Obsessions about horror movies, all that sort of thing. And he's a fantastic author. I've been meaning to read this for quite some time. I finally got round to it. I'm not someone that reads a lot. There's a 7-year-old in the house. It's very loud and noisy, and as soon as he goes to bed I just want to get on that sofa and watch some movies. But I wanted to make an exception for this. I've always admired Chris's work. He writes poetry, which is just beautiful. It's like watching like Portrait Artist of the Year we've been watching at the moment, and my mind just boggles. I don't have an artistic bone in my body. I look at people that can paint and it's like magic to me. It's the same with how Chris can write. How you can, like, I don't want to use the word churn out because that's the wrong word, how you can write such a volume of poetry of the calibre that he actually puts out is incredulous to me. Anyway, I really wanted to do a review of this book and urge anyone, even people out there that don't read too much, it's not expensive, it's very reasonably priced on Amazon. I will put a link below. I really would like to urge you to support Chris and purchase this and give it a read and give him some feedback as to what you think. I honestly don't think anyone would be disappointed. It's a really fantastic book. Easy to read, short stories. I found it really easy to read, and I don't get a chance to read very much. I just think it's important to support your friends, really, to be fair. Even if it had been crap, which I knew it wasn't going to be, as Chris, I'm buying it anyway, it doesn't matter. But it is fantastic. I wouldn't do, if I bought it and I didn't like it, I just wouldn't review it, simple as that. But I'm plugging the arse out of it because I really like it. I really want people to read it, especially Chris's friends. It'd be great if you can give them some support and pick up a copy, because it deserves to be read, people. You know, when you do something like this and when you put the work like this in that he has, you know, it deserves people to at least go out and give it a go. So anyway, to the review. So, as I said, it is a collection of short stories. I am not going to go through all of them. I am going to pick a few. I have already asked Chris's permission in advance to speak a little bit about them. I'm sure people, you know, an author doesn't want someone to give away everything that's in the books. That wouldn't be fair, but he has given me permission to discuss bits and pieces and even to read a couple of little bits out for you to give you just an idea of the style of writing. So the first one in here is called The Light. It's, I don't want to say what it's about because that gives it away. It's something I found from reading this, from not just this story but other stories later in the book, is Chris's ability to really well imagine and translate human emotion and relationship. The first story is a father-son relationship. I'm not going to say what happens, but it's just everything. Like, if I tried to write a story like this, I would struggle to write more than half a page. But Chris manages to, just the tiniest detail, and I don't mean that it's dull, I don't mean he over-describes, he doesn't. He just paints a scene so fantastically well. He manages to put across family relationships and emotions and both sides of those emotions just incredibly well. The next one I've written down is called Stillbridge. I've written this down because it's not a strange concept, but there's this story and one later called this something house, hang on, this one house, and he manages to give inanimate objects. Telephone's ringing downstairs. I wonder, is that for me? Hang on. It wasn't for me, it's Isaac's granddad from Yorkshire. So, that's quite apt, Chris being from Yorkshire and all that. Right, so what was it saying? He manages to give inanimate objects personality, being. He manages to make you feel for inanimate objects. In the first case of Bridge, but more so in my opinion, I absolutely adored this one house, which he writes later in the book, and it is all about a doorknob. That sounds strange, but it's the comings and goings that this doorknob sees through the life cycle of the house and the people that move in. And it just is a really sweet, lovely ending, absolutely beautiful ending that I was just praying for. And it's ridiculous that you can feel emotion for a doorknob. Honestly, folks, it's just so fantastically written. You can't not. So I just wanted to get that across, that just breathe life into something that's inanimate, and he does it amazingly well. Right, another one in here, it's called, I will spend more time on some than others, it's called Facing Night. Now this one just is totally believable to me. I am a big wuss. If I watch certain things on telly, especially anything paranormal, I am a big fat wuss about going around the house in the dark. I don't like it. This book puts across that creepy sensation of just night, of being in your house at night time, of untoward things happening. That's why it's called Facing Night, and he manages to translate that fear, that, should I say fear, unfounded fear that a lot of us have, me included. So that one was really nice to read. That I got it completely. I'm one of those people that scares the bejesus out of myself. Next we have, right, this is the one I have to ask Chris about. This one's called Just Right. I could be wrong, but I am dying for Chris to tell me. In this book, two characters, Jacob and Eve. I am dying for Chris to tell me that this is him and Victoria, because as I read this story, basically it's about a couple that were clearly meant to be, and something keeps getting in the way. And they meet at lots of different events. They meet at a wedding, a housewarming, Halloween party. A lot of things get in the way, and they never seem to get it together. When I read it, I just was picturing Chris and Victoria all the way through. To me, that is them. That story is them to me. I don't know if that's the case. Right, where did I get to? I've just had to move the camera. Moving it a little bit more. My batteries are running out on my phone, so in my wisdom I decided to record this on my iPhone, because my camera, which is really old. Oh, I've just remembered Darren bought me one for Valentine's Day. It was a second-hand one, though I haven't used it yet. But it keeps making this weird focusing noise, so I decided to use my iPhone, and the battery's nearly flat. Anyway, so Chris is just right about you and Victoria. I read her. I read the girl in the story, Eve, as Victoria. The hair, the glasses, the personality, just please tell me that is Victoria, because it is so cool if it is. Down to the Harry Potter cosplay. Did she ever dress up as Harry Potter or one of the characters? It just spoke to me as your relationship, this story. And to everyone else, just a really sweet story about a couple that are meant to be. They're just right, and everything just gets in their way all the way through. And it's about a love that should have been, or is it going to be, or isn't it? I'll not tell you. But yeah, really, really sweet story. Chris writes people really well. I mean, if the guy can animate a doorknob and a bridge, he has this ability that, I'm going to be incredibly sexist here and I apologise, a lot of men cannot write emotion the way a woman wants to read it or a woman wants to feel it. He just writes emotion and feeling and all of that just incredibly well. I think it's quite a rare trait for especially a young man to be able to write that subject so with such insight. I suppose it's because he's one of the lucky ones that's, met the love of his life when he was a teenager. They're still together and they're blissfully happy, and I don't think many of us can say that. I'm obviously very happy, but it took me a long time. I didn't meet my husband until I was almost 30, 29, so it's maybe that's why. I don't know, but anyway, besides the point. Right, the next one, where are we? What have I written? Right, there's one called That Aching Vengeance. The main thing I wanted to say about that one is set, is it South America, I think? But he translates the scene really well, like in a dingy bar, dusty, sort of like a cowboy sort of image, and he's got the, the vernacular, he's got the language, he's got the accent. He's got how they speak to one another down pat really well. You know, it's just crazy. Someone can write so many different. This is what I really admire about this. Shards is made up of, each story is a shard, mix up a whole, but each of these stories are so incredibly different, and different in style, different in content. He just writes so many different genres so well. What other one? Visiting Time. This one is really, really sad. There's two in particular, Visiting Time being one, and is Pieces the other? I'll get to it later, but the incredible sadness of illness, of sickness in a family, of mental illness, which is a subject that we should all be talking more about anyway. But I've experienced this big time within my family, not myself thankfully, but my own mother has struggled really, really badly with mental illness in the past and hospitalisation, and it's difficult. And I know Chris has worked in a caring profession before within mental health, and I don't know if his experience within that has helped with a couple of these stories in particular. But in this one, Visiting Time, it's a story about a mother and her son, and her son is within an institution, and I suppose it's like how most people see Alzheimer's. The older person usually doesn't recognise their partner, and you know, it's about the heartbreak that entails for the person that's visiting, for the family member. But in this case, it's not an old person, it's her son, her young son, who can be aggressive and violent. And just the thought, as a mother of a boy, just the thought that watching that happen to your child, and the experience of going to visit him, the heartbreaking just realisation every time she goes that he doesn't know who she is, and those tiny little glimpses that we have in this one of where he realises, or there's a sign of him realising who she is. It's utterly heartbreaking. It's incredibly well put together. Right, the next one I'm going to speak about is called Soil in the Eye. And the reason I'm talking about this one, I've just realised I'm sitting at a really weird angle. Sorry, folks. It's a bit too close, isn't it? Oh! The next one, Soil in the Eye. The reason I'm going to talk about this one is because it's pretty short, and I thought I would read this one. Obviously, fast forward if reading out things bores you, but I would have thought that Chris's friends would be interested to sort of see the writing style, and this one is quite short, so I thought this is one of the ones that I was going to use. So I'm not going to say what it's about because it's pretty self-explanatory when I read it for you, but I think it conveys the environment, the feeling, and everything about this really well. So this is where my accent isn't... I'm looking in the wrong bloody place. This is where my accent is not going to come in handy. Hopefully you can understand me. Right, so it's called Soil in the Eye. He choked, his eyes opening and seeing nothing. Blackness. Pure, thick, dark space. He coughed, the smell of dirt and earth filling his lungs like smoke. He could taste soil, dusty and dry, old and bitter, like the side of a penny. He couldn't move his arms or legs, and when he tried to reach upwards or to his sides, he just felt wooden boards, solid and stiff, like the walls of a cabin. He felt pain at the back of his head, and his leg felt like it was broken, but he couldn't touch either, and his eyes weren't adapting to the darkness. It was too powerful, too impossibly boundless. He coughed again and spat dirt from his tongue, gritty and harsh, and he squirmed and manoeuvred, the pain shooting to all the places he'd suspected were injured. He managed to pull his arms from his sides and up to his chest, and he pushed upwards the best he could. It was hard and strong, an unmoving wall of strength. He felt tears in his dry eyes, and he wasn't entirely sure if they were from fear or from the soil that had seeped through the cracks in the wood and made the roof to his tomb. He pondered for a moment that felt like hours, but it was more likely to be only a minute or two, and he couldn't fathom the situation he found himself in. He thought for a second that maybe he could remember being hit in the back of the head when he answered his door, but the memory disappeared as quickly as it came. He punched and thrashed around as he lay in his coffin, and he felt his legs swinging in unnatural ways, and his knuckles ached with the blood and bruises from trying to fight his way out. The darkness didn't atone. It continued its ferocious ways as he sucked in air and struggled to fill his lungs. His hands and his arms, his legs and his head, and even his breath, all calmed to a subtle release of control. The blood on the floor was sticky and warm, and it smelled of rust like a tin bath in a rainstorm. The soil continued to trickle through, and the oxygen dwindled down to the smallest breath. A couple of short moments ticked by, and he saw the darkness changing before him, the thick shroud of blackness slowly filling with a vibrant, bright, shining light, and as the dead of night in the casket disappeared, so did the hold that his body held over his soul, and he crawled easily through the windboards and floated to safety, away from the horrible grave at the bottom of his garden. How cool is that? Being buried alive is one of my biggest fears. I know it's not likely to happen, but yeah, I think you can totally... I held my breath when I read that. It was just so totally claustrophobic as I was reading it, and just one thing as well that just happened in every story in this book again and again is, I want to say similes. I'm sure it's a simile when something is like something else. The same old similes I feel are always repeated in books, in movies, wherever. Every simile that Chris used was new to me. It's something that he himself has come up with. There are a couple of examples later on. When I get to them, I'll tell you what I mean. But yeah, I just wanted to read that one to give you an idea. So that was Dirt in the Eye, was it? Soil in the Eye? Soil in the Eye, sorry. Right. So the next one, A Busy Doorway. This one reminded me a lot. This one's quite personal to me. It reminded me a lot of me and Darren. The premise is basically a couple. I got the impression from the story they met online, and eventually they meet together in an airport. And they've had a lot of love built up between them before they actually meet for the first time. And it's about them meeting, and it's about them going back home again, away from each other, and how that inevitably feels. Myself and Darren met online. We were friends for a long time before we got together, because we were both with other people when we first started talking. And we originally met for the first time in Leeds train station. I lived in Derby, he lived in Yorkshire, so we were about 100 miles apart-ish. Darren didn't drive at the time. I had just passed my driving test, and the emotions and feelings within that story is a busy doorway. So they're meeting for the first time and saying goodbye for the first time in a very busy environment. And he describes like other people going about their day and their meets and greets and whatever's going on. It just drew a lot of parallels for me of actually being in that environment, being that person, because that's totally how we met, and the emotions is very, very true for me. After that one, let me see. Right, this one is this is the last time I'm going to do this. I really don't want to annoy people by making this too long, but this one is called Waking Moment. It's really short. I'm going to read it as well. So, I'm not going to read another one. This is the last one, honest. So this is just about waking up. But some people that wake up every day are faced with a mountain of worries. I'm sure we've all been there. Or severe pain. Waking for them and waking up to the same thing again is possibly a lot different to some people. That most things are fine when they wake up, but this to me translated really well again. With me suffering from fibro and ME, and every morning you wake up, pain's a big part of things. Anyway, this just really spoke to me, this one. It's not really so much about physical pain, but anxiety and worry. Right, so it's called A Waking Moment. Blackness. Then suddenly more light than you've seen in hours. The body buzzes and the heart beats in that slow and calm and tranquil way. Silence. Total quiet. The mind still stretching and yawning and waking on its own. The worries, the anxiety and all the pressures of life and its stresses and concerns is still in the pillow, sleeping, dimmed and unmoving. Only for a moment. The sound of a snore or a tired wheeze beside you, closed eyes and serene expression makes things seem beautiful, the potential endless. Life without those things that bite and nip at the nerves. Eyes clouded by the dry dust of the Sandman's kiss, and lips yet to speak on the day. Life is hard. So much pain, hate, worry, hope, hopeless. There is a brief patch of time when the dreams come to an end and the day blows on your face when it whacks you, when things feel fine. The waking moment, the beautiful clarity, the potential of beauty. It ends, but it always returns. Nice. Just the thought of the potential of a day, if you wake up and things aren't how they are, the pain hasn't set in yet, the anxiety, the worry, the stress, just those few brief moments when you wake in the morning, and being able to write down, being able to translate that into a story. If I tried to say that to you, I would say a sentence, because I wouldn't be able to do this. So anyway, that was Waking Moment. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is called Locked Inside. This was one of my favourites. This story actually brought tears to my eyes. Can you hear that? That's my husband telling my son off downstairs. I reiterate the difficulty of reading when you have to listen to racket. I'm on an entirely different floor through numerous locked doors, and I can hear shouting. Right, anyway, as I was saying, this just brings tears to my eyes, this story. It's about an old man, very lonely, going about his day, trying to convince himself that he's not lonely, that he doesn't care. I, again, don't want to go into the ending of this. I really, really, really urge people to buy this book and read it, because this story is just so beautifully written. It's heartbreaking. You know, to be able to make a person cry just with words on a page is incredible. But in this book there is just examples of the similes that I mentioned to you earlier. Actually, this isn't a simile, this is just a lovely little passage. So the old man is looking out the window and he sees a blackbird. It's not like a major part of the story. I just absolutely love the way it was written. Just, you know, this old man looking at this bird. So he's... Oh my god, I'm sorry. I'm that close to shouting, to being angry mom. Right, so this old guy's looking out the window. He peeked out of the window and caught a glimpse of a blackbird resting on its fence. Its head darted from side to side, observing the morning before fluttering its wings and flying to its next destination, possibly another fence in the front yard of another tired old man. It's just beautiful. It's just that little piece of information that doesn't tell the story as such, but it's just a piece of detail that brings the story to life, that makes you understand the old man, makes you understand his situation, paints a picture. It's again painting the picture of what's going on, just really nicely written. I'm sure in this story there were actually examples of the similes that I was mentioning. So this page, where I'd mentioned similes, you can imagine like the feeling of being backed into a corner. In this one, Chris likens it. He says he stepped back, putting his hand against a dresser and gritting his teeth like a dog backed into an alley at night. I've never heard that before. I just thought that was such a fantastic way of describing it, because everybody knows you do not back a dog into a corner as to how it may react. Just really, really nice simile. This one is probably my favourite simile that Chris has used. Again, I have to read the sentence for you to get it across. The morning came into being and rain fell from the sky, tapping the window like a murder of crows lightly walking across corrugated iron. Amazing. Murder of crows and corrugated iron. Where do these things come from? This isn't like a simplistic simile. This is really descriptive stuff, really beautiful writing. Right. The next one that I've mentioned here is totally different. This one's called Saturday Night Movie Massacre. Sorry, Saturday Night Movie Massacre. I do mumble. I do run my words together too much. This is just so utterly different from anything else. I've just been and asked them to keep it down and to stop shouting, and I can still hear them. This just gives you an illustration as to the difficulty of reading a book in this house. This is about, I want to say troll. I don't know if Chris would use a different word. It's like a little creature that lives in the cinema. This is like a real horror element to this, and he kills people, and this is a story about that happening. It's just really, really well written, extremely descriptive. In this one, there is a sentence that I love. I looked at this one a bit deeper than just that instant. I don't know if Chris means it like the way I've taken it, but there must be, in a serial killer's mind, there must be that one defining moment where they realise that what they have done, and that this isn't going to be the first time that they do that. That defining moment must exist in those people's minds. And Chris has really put it across really well here. So he has said, this is after whatever has happened has happened. He vomited in his hands and cried for a moment, but the tears weren't those of regret, but rather of a realisation that what he'd done was much easier than he'd ever expected, and he knew then that he would do it again. Really like that. You can really imagine that moment of clarity and realisation occurring to people that do these sort of things. Also, the guy's called Tangerine, which is just really neat. I really like that. He heard, this troll creature heard a pretty girl say the word tangerine, and he liked how it sounded, so he decided that that would be his name, Tangerine. This next one is called The Broken Grasp. Absolutely heartbreaking. If I didn't want to annoy everybody by the longest book review in the world, I would read this, but I'm not going to. It's absolutely heartbreakingly beautiful. This is, I can only imagine, set during the Holocaust, and it's about a child. It's about the simple action of a child being separated from his mother while in a queue at that time, and what happens, and not what happens, just the action of them being separated. It's called The Broken Grasp. Just the emotion of it. It's very short, it's very descriptive. It's heartbreaking. You know, because when we read that, us now that knows what happened and knows the future ahead of this child and ahead of this woman, it's difficult. It's really insightful, really well written. I think the thing Chris does best in his writing, in my opinion, is he injects so much emotion into it, so much feeling. If you're one of these people, like myself, and I know Victoria is also, that can really be affected emotionally by a movie or a book, you can actually feel as you read. You can be upset, angry, happy, excited. If you're one of those people, you really, read something Chris has written, because he does that side of things so incredibly well. And it's like the poetic flow of the language and how things are described and the picture that's painted. Really, why would you not want to read something like that? Let me see. Pieces is the next one. I've written page 147. Ah, yes. This one's really sad as well. When I said earlier about... This isn't so much mental health. The one I spoke about the mother and her son, this one is again a family relationship. It is an older man nearing the end of his life. The story starts off like something entirely different. I'm not going to go into what happens in the story or how it starts, but this one is also extremely sad. It just really hit me in the heart, this one. This, I don't know if I want to read this or not, because I don't want to give away too much about this story. No, I'm not going to read that, because it just gives away too much. But Chris, page 147, the last half of that page, and obviously the next page where, well, you read it yourself, it's just incredibly well written. It's just beautiful. I don't want to read that out to other people, but yeah, beautiful. Next one's this one house. I mentioned before about the doorknob and the different people that came in and out of the house over the years. Really nice, really sweet, really made me smile. Really insightful about people, about relationships, and breathed the life into an inanimate object and made you feel for this object. Fantastic. Prison story. Yep. What I'd written about this one, I was reading this one last night. This is two guys called Penn and Ricky, and one of them is like a seasoned criminal. He's seen many cellmates come and go. Seems like a nice guy. It never says what he's done, but he seems like a fair, decent guy. And a young guy comes in, a new guy that's Ricky, very wide-eyed and innocent, and really shouldn't be there. It really paints. I've watched a lot of prison things, Orange is the New Black, more serious prison things as well. I used to watch Prisoner Cell Block back in the day, and then they reinvented that to Wentworth. I really like it. You know, The Green Mile, Escape from Alcatraz, Murder in the First, which is my favourite. If you haven't seen Murder in the First with Kevin Bacon, watch it. I think Chris paints the scene in the prison really well. I would actually love to see this story as a book. I would love to see what happens. I think this could be an excellent book, Chris. The characters and just how you've fleshed them out, how you've made them real. The bad guy, how you've just done an incredible job with those characters, and I think you really could write an awesome book about that. So yeah. I'm nearly finished, folks. Thanks for sticking with me if you still are. Sure, what else would you be doing? Right, Varg the Unfortunate. This is it's completely unlike the Saturday Night Massacre, but it's like it in the sense that it's an otherworldly thing. It's fantasy. I don't read stuff like this. I'm more a fan of the real stuff that happens, crime, thriller. I don't read fantasy, but I have enjoyed these stories that Chris has written. The character in this, I possibly shouldn't have seen it like this, Chris, but I couldn't help but picture Varg as a cartoon. Varg is an unfortunate vampire who is born with his fangs in his bottom jaw instead of his top, so when a vampire's fangs come down, well, his shoot up from the bottom. I could do the face, I'm not going to. And his wings haven't grown. They all have wings and he hasn't got wings, so he's a bit of a outcast. People make fun of him. He doesn't have friends. He's very lonely, and he has an incredible crush on a beautiful, probably one of the only women in the book that I don't feel has been based around Victoria. Most of the other women when I say women, love interests or younger women remind me of Victoria a lot, because I think when Chris writes about love and emotion and beauty, he finds it difficult, that's not the right word. I think his mind is automatically, and rightfully so, it just defines the relationship to me. When he thinks about love and about attraction and about beauty, he will automatically think of Victoria. And I think that comes across a lot in his writing, which I love. I'm a sucker for romance. And side note, I love the fact you call her Mouse. That is just so cute. I love it. That's in the acknowledgements. And if you didn't want people to know, you shouldn't have written it. But it's so cute. I love it. And it's so suitable. It is just perfect. That's just brilliant. So anyway, this femme fatale, this female vampire, this foxy vampire, is just Varg wants her. She's like his perfect woman. It's someone that he wants and he's never going to have. But on this planet, have I written the name of the planet down? Let's have a look. No, I haven't. So, is her name Pyara? Pyara, I think. Anyway, on the planet they have a rule that if they haven't had a child by a certain amount of time, that they are killed by their own kind. So Pyara probably knows how Varg feels about her, and she puts to him that they should have children together. Oh, he can't believe his luck. It's like, what? it's just a really sweet story, but I can't believe I'm saying sweet, but it's like full of humans being like, I absolutely adore what Chris refers to humans as in this. It made me laugh out loud. I don't know if I meant to laugh out loud, but a vampire referring to a human as a squealing human juice bag just to me cracked me up. I thought it was brilliant. It really made me laugh. That is, it's just full of humour to me. I really hope, Chris, that I'm not completely barking up the wrong tree by saying that, but I loved Varg. He just come across to me as just, cute's the wrong word. I really was rooting for him. I really liked him. He may be a vampire, he may be sucking, squealing human, what is it, juice bags, but yeah, I liked him. I was rooting for him. Really nice one. I think that's the main ones I wanted to talk about. The last one is called Poet. It's about a Parisian poet over the years and his career, and he meets the love of his life and he has children, and he's approaching the end of his life, or what he feels is the end of his life. Chris doesn't actually say what happens in the end. I think it's left to your own imagination if what you think happens happens. In my opinion, it does. I'm not going to say anything. But I don't know if Chris was writing about himself in this, because Chris writes poems a lot and he is amazing as a poet. But it really, again, the humanity and the emotion and the real love came out in this one. I'm not going to go into any more detail about any more stories, because I am aware this is really, really long, and I just hope that people have like listened to it, or at least some of it. I just really would urge you to go out and purchase Shards. As I say, it's really reasonably priced. I'll put a link in the description. I just would really appreciate the support for Chris, because, you know, he's a fantastic author. He hasn't had the success he so rightly deserves. I mean, I'll give you an example. Behind me, you can probably see a lot of books by the same author. My favourite author is Shaun Hudson. Now, he is not ever going to win any awards. He's a horror writer, more so these days crime and thriller, but I love him. I've always loved him. I have a real affection for him since I was a teenager, so I've got my beady hands on everything that he's written, under every pseudonym that he's written under. But Chris writes so much better than him, and I don't say that lightly. Shaun writes really engagingly. He keeps the pages turning really easily. He gets the reader hooked, riveted, wants to see what happens next. He jumps back and forth a lot between what's happening in different scenarios that always inevitably end up together somehow. And I love Shaun Hudson's writing. It's very descriptive, very brutal in places. But Chris has just got writing, I can only describe it in a real art form. There's a difference between someone that can write and someone that can write beautifully. Chris writes beautifully. The way he puts the words together. I'm going to have to make this really quick. I just got a message flashing up that my iPhone is full, so I've had to delete some music off there just to get the last bit of this fitted in. I'm really sorry I've waffled on for so long. I really hope people still read it, Chris. Get it. Shards. Really excellent to read. You've heard me waffle for long enough. Get it purchased, get it read. Let Chris know what you think. It's awesome. So hopefully you stuck with me through that. I really apologise if it's too long and waffly, but I watch long and waffly things, so hopefully some of you might watch long and waffly things too. So anyway, it's over and out from Lisa Loves.